All right, everyone, I'm going to share today everything that I know about GMT800, Chevy Silverados, and Sierras. So my background with these is, I have an 01, 5.3, 1500, does have the towing package, so it does have the disc brakes in the rear, and as I said, it's 5.3. And I have an 02, 2500 HG, 410 gear, long bed four-door. It's been a really great truck, too. Several friends have had many different examples. We have broken and enjoyed many different examples of these trucks over the years between many different friends, 1500s, 2500s, 3500s, dualies, Duramaxes, no 8.1s. None of my friends and I have never owned an 8.1 in a truck. So that's one thing I've always wanted to tinker with. When I was searching for my first vehicle, I was weighing between two trucks. One was a four-door, four-wheel drive, Z71, 8.1 Silverado, 2500. I think it was 2500. And that was in Colorado. And then the other I ended up buying was my Excursion from Utah. And those are the two first trucks that I was looking at buying back in 2012. I had just been accepted to Kettering, and I wanted to have a four-wheel drive truck because I knew I was going to be driving around many different places in terms of for co-op commuting to Flint. And then I worked in Holland for a long time. I also worked at the Chelsea Proving Grounds when I worked for FCA. That was part of the potential purchase list, and I do kind of wish I would have had the money to buy both, but that's not realistic. So this truck here has 261,000 miles on it. A second, I was turning on dirt road here. 261,000 miles. It is somewhat original. By that I mean it has the original T-case, original trans. It does have Auto 4, and that still works, basically. And the engine is original. A couple things have been changed here and there in terms of service, and has obviously brakes have been replaced. As far as I know, the ball joints are original. As far as I know, tie rods are original, and obviously there's a little bit to show for it. These trucks have an extremely good reputation, and they are really fun to own because you can have a relatively capable truck for really not a lot of money, and moreover, they have a lot of following because they have a really excellent engine in them. You're buying a truck that has the same platform. It is an LS engine. It is an iron block version. It is the exact same in terms of the web layout, in terms of the camshaft and the head design, the valve train design. All of it is LS. So you're buying a truck that has a very reliable engine, a huge aftermarket, and things that you can do galore to the engine. And moreover, it's just cool to have a really solid engine. This being a 1500, we have to be a little bit more careful, because behind a really excellent engine is the 4L16. And that, I think, is the biggest downside of buying a half-ton, whether it's a Suburban, a Yukon, a Silverado, Sierra, or didn't they have 1500 Avalanches? Yeah, they have 1500 Avalanches. And those should have 5.3, 4.8s, and 4L16. It is not the best transmission in the world. It has fairly decent gear ratios. That's why people, I'm not going to even say enjoy it, but use it. His first gear is a little more, overdrive is a little bit more. The problem is that when you're towing, you really shouldn't be using overdrive anyway because, well, the trans tends to get hot. That is what kills 4L60Es, is a hot transmission. The cooling is not enough on these, and you have to be super duper careful. If you want to have one that lasts, having 373 gears, which is what this truck has, and the towing package, which I believe this has a fairly sizable transmission cooler. Trucks that didn't have a towing package, they tend to burn up transmissions pretty quick. And usually that has a huge snowball effect of once you burn up a trans, you have a high likelihood of burning another one. And the reason for that is usually, especially in a cheap truck or a cheaper truck, you're tending to look around for the cheapest solution. Well, the cheapest solution is usually people slap a new trans in or rebuild trans and use the same torque converters, use the same cooling system, as in the same cooler lines and the same cooler. When you do that, you tend to ingest all the guts that were of the broken trans right back into the new trans, and very bad things happen. The The torque converter holds a lot of that particulate garbage, and as soon as you go hooking that up and firing that up, the trans eats all the garbage, and you're in deep trouble. So that is the one thing to be extremely careful with the 1500s. The bodies are more or less exactly the same. Well, they are exactly the same. What is different is, depending on the year, and you can put the half-ton hood and fenders and grill on a 2500 HD, should you want to. It's all the same, but you're going to need to have an HD core support, and or else things are not going to line up. And you can go ahead and put the different, you could do a change. People like cat eyes. I'm not a fan of cat eyes. I also don't really like the GMC front end. Again, there's people like GMC front ends. That's why what's beautiful about this world is we have options. And options mean that you can have different opinions and different likes and whatever. And, you can suit those likes with whatever the heck you like. The half tons, if they don't have a towing package, as far as I know, they don't have a towing package. They have drum brakes at the rear, which again isn't a terrible thing, but drum brakes are a lot more work to change. I hate doing drum brakes. I hope I don't ever have to do another drum brake again in my whole lifetime. I rest easy doing a lot of disc brakes. Oh, look at that classy GMT800 Suburban. Oh, it is so refreshing to see so many old trucks being daily driven. Now, I'm going to tell you, so that's actually a great segue here. What does it take to keep an old truck on the road? Well, these trucks are fairly easy to keep on the road. The biggest common problem with a 4.8 and a 5.3 for the half tons is they do tend to pop head gaskets. I do believe I do have a leaking head gasket on this truck. It doesn't make me happy, but it is what it is. And I have compensated for that. It is wintertime by cracking open the coolant bottle lid and therefore minimizing how much pressure we're building. And eventually I'm going to have to do an engine rebuild because I'm pretty sure that's our last coolant leak. We had a slight weep from the water pump, which is another problem that all LS engines have, is the water pump. Keep in mind, the stock water pump made it to 261,000 miles. Is it a problem? No. Any vehicle over 200,000 miles, you better start thinking that no matter how great it was when it was new, it's no longer new anymore. Oh, look at that old girl dead on the side of the road. Oh, parts trucks. So that's another great segue. If you have one of these trucks and you want to keep it on the road, or you're planning on getting one and you want to keep it on the road to daily drive, having a parts truck is a really great investment. You can pick up one of these. Let's say you have a good motor or a good trans. Pick up one with a blown trans or a blown motor, depending on what you want to have an extra of, and you'd have a whole interior, a whole body, axle, front end. You'd have all your parts sitting there ready to go in a parts truck. Highly recommend parts trucks when it comes to keeping these older trucks going and on the road. Keeping with the half-ton theme, I don't know of any heavy half tons. Now, obviously, the 1500 HD, totally different setup, different ball game. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't know of any true 6-lug heavy halves, as in I don't think they put 14-bolt semi-floats in any GMT800. If you have one, or if you swapped one in, let me know. I'm just curious. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. I have a heavy half 1994 Chevy K1500, which is really cool because it's a heavy half, and therefore it has a semi-float 14-bolt rear end, which is fairly strong compared to a 10-bolt, which is what this has. You have to be extremely careful with a 10-bolt. If you're going to have any power going through it, or if you're going to be wheeling in it, be prepared to break it. One night we went out in my buddy's 02 half-ton. It's actually one of the 5.3s I have as a backup motor, from that truck. And we were yahooing around and, going from buddy's house to buddy's house or bar to bar, and yahooing with the truck. And he did a couple burnouts and a couple donuts from gravel to dirt. And it took literally 3 of those gravel to dirt transitions before he blasted the rear end. These rear ends do not put up with very much. They are not very strong. Please respect them. And if you have a Suburban or a Yukon, they have a link rear suspension, so you can't just swap in any old, if you want to do a full floater, you have to work for it. So it's not as easy as just doing a quick swap. You can swap 14-bolt full floaters into these. You're going to end up with 8-lug rear end, which is really cool, and we'll get to that in the modification portion of this video. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, then we'll restart it so I don't lose what I got. So, continuing with the half-ton theme. My recommendation is to enjoy these trucks at stock height and put 265 75R16s on them. whether it be mud tires, whether it be all-terrains, whether it be winter tires, snow tires, whether it be highway tires. They are wonderful at stock height. They're easy to get in. They're very capable off-road. Don't ever let someone tell you that a stock height truck is incapable off-road. This truck does a very good job, and for someone who owns a vehicle like this, maybe you want to go up to your hunting camp, you want to go to your snowmobile camp, you want to go to deer camp, hunting camp, whatever. You want to go, camping, snowshoeing, whatever, your normal person activities, having fun. They are really good trucks, and if you pair them with the right tire for the application that you're using the truck in, you're going to have a really solid platform that is going to get good fuel economy, have good range. They have small fuel tanks, something to keep in mind. All the GMT800 trucks have really small fuel tanks. So range is a concern. If you go modifying them or putting 35s on, get ready for 200-mile fuel range on an HD. They have a tendency to burn a lot of fuel. If you got a short bed, you got a small tank. I believe that the long bed trucks have a bigger fuel tank. Moving forward. The interiors tend to hold up extremely well. The biggest thing about Chevys or this era truck is door latches, door locks, dashboard. So this is probably the most expensive and most annoying thing you could ever deal with, is if you lose your dashboard or one portion of the dashboard, you got to replace the whole thing. The stepper motors get tired in them and then they don't work. And it means that you end up, no trains, you end up replacing a $200-something dashboard to get your dash back to so you have a speedometer. Other thing that I don't really care for is half tons don't have a transmission gauge. Why in the world, Chevy, did you not give a vehicle that has a weak transmission a transmission gauge? And it has a lot to do with why half tons tend to have more issues, is people don't know how hot they're getting them. So that's something you can either put an aftermarket in or just keep in the back of your head to go easy on your 406E, because it can get very hot when you're towing. Towing wise, they come with terrible hitches. Please put throw the round tube hitch in the garbage can, put an aftermarket Kurt or Reese or whatever square tube hitch on, and make sure that it is sized properly for your application. Most 2500 HDs came with the same hitch as a half ton. They are way underrated for using it as an HD truck. Please change it before you end up breaking the hitch. A lot of people will sit there and say, oh no, they're fine, right up until the tongue of their trailer ends up on the ground and they're stuck on the side of the road with a broken hitch. Please change them. And if you're running, a lot of vehicles have already learned this, if the vehicle has been towed with a lot. I will say, when you're searching for an aftermarket, when you're searching for a vehicle, if it has a fancy aftermarket hitch, you might keep in mind that it's been towed with, because generally someone who doesn't tow doesn't upgrade their hitch. Something to keep in mind. These trucks are more than capable of towing, your single axle boats, your small campers, if you can keep them small. They can tow a lot more than that. In fact, my buddy's parents it got totaled when a woman crossed the center line when she was high and drunk, and blew the front end off the truck, and he ended up with a 5.3 darn near in his lap. They had, I don't remember what failure they had. They had an 0160 as well, 2500 HD. Something happened where they had to tow. They had a fifth wheel hitch in their we called it the tiny ton. It was a G71 towing package, had disc brakes, 5.3 regular head long bed. It was a really good truck, and it died a really awful death at like 169,000 miles, I think it was. They had a fifth wheel hitch in there, and they towed their massive, it was like a 28-foot fifth wheel with the tiny ton, and I don't remember the reason why they couldn't use the 6.0. Something happened to it. It went in for a recall or something, and they went camping with the tiny ton. People did a lot crazier things back in the early 2000s. A lot of the reason is because we were just talking about this in one of the groups today, is that a 454 373 gear 4-door short bed 2500 HD from the 90s is only rated at 8,400 pounds of towing capacity anyway. So a lot of these trucks didn't have very high towing capacities irregardless. And these half tons had basically similar towing capacities to what 2500 HDs had, or 2500 GMT800 90s trucks had, and Fords and Dodges. They didn't have really high towing capacities. So when you get into the 2000s, there's a huge step up in brake systems, cooling systems, or whatever, and you do get a more capable truck. The Achilles heel of this truck is the Chevy IFS system and the 10-bolt rear and the 4L16. I guess kind of all of it. The auto track transfer cases can be a problem if you use auto track a lot. they can wear or have clutch issues, and some of that contamination can damage other parts of the T-case. That's another issue too. The reason why people like this is when you're driving one of these things, they just work, and they work really, really well. And if all you need to do is have a truck that you can drive around, use four-wheel drive, move a little trailer once in a while, and you don't want to spend a lot of money on a new truck, you just want to get an old one. These trucks have relatively modern security systems, door locks, windows, and I mentioned window motors. I think I mentioned door locks, windows motors, door latches. Those kind of things are common failures. They're easy to fix, though. They are common failures, but they're easy to change. It is not... Boy, is it slippery. These problems are really easy to fix. It has a very easy-to-use climate control system, and they came with decent radios that do not have Bluetooth. Let me tell you, all the years of dinking with those Bluetooths that hook up to your... And some of them have 3-position... Does this one have 3-position? Oh, yeah. 3-position 12-volt plugs. That was a good option to have in these trucks. So one of them, you could have your Bluetooth... or your... not Bluetooth. Well, they had that, too. They would do that too, but the wired conversion to an AM or an FM signal so that you could play music over the radio using AM or FM. I think some of them may have had aux plugs in the back of these that you could route a wire to, and then you'd stick it out of the dash somewhere and plug it in. I don't know if this one has that. I'm not going to take it apart. I'm not that worried about it. Some of them had distance to empty and computers and all that good stuff up here. Usually they're kind of inaccurate, so take that as you will. Sunroofs. 20-year-old truck, I don't really know if I'd want to have sunroof, but if you can find one that's been cared for and used and lubed and whatnot, that would work too. So, where are we at here? Giving you a pretty good background on owning one of these. The driving feel is they have very light steering when power steering is working properly. They have fairly good brake feel, fairly good brake performance, good throttle feel. But I will warn you, or I will let you know, that the original calibration on these engines is extremely detuned. The 5.3 is capable of so much more than it is being ahead of a 4L16. We put a 5.3, it's an alot 7 is what this generation is. This exact engine from a 02, or no, a 99, into a 2500 HD, and I tuned it. It was a rocket ship. And we also had that truck, or he manual swapped it with a NV4500 in a different truck, and he ran that for a long time, like 50,000 miles of beating the tar out of it with a manual trans. Then he put it into a 2500 HD. We turned off all torque controls, gave it all the fuel in the world and all the timing, and the truck was no slouch. And being backed by a 480E, we could have no torque controls, a lot of timing, a lot of fuel, and the engine ran great. Got about a mile and a half or two better than the normal 6.0 gets. Normal 6.0 with a good tune, 13.5, 14.5 miles a gallon, pretty easy to do for normal driving. Or with the 5.3, he was getting 14.5, 15.5 fairly consistently. We're gonna have some ice here climbing this little hill. Will she make it? Oh yes, she will. So we have KO2s on this. Oh, a little spinach there. We have KO2s on this truck, and they are phenomenal in the ice, in the snow. And they are 265, 75 R16s, just as I said. They're load range D. Pretty sure? Or no, they're load range E. Load range E. And they work extremely well. Highly recommend that tire size on this vehicle, and I recommend not getting crazy. This is a wonderful platform to go wild with. It is not a good platform to go mild with. I would recommend keeping it at stock height, not doing anything crazy, not putting any crazy power to it, and using it and enjoying it as a respectful young man or young woman that you are. If you want to go wild, plan on having to do a lot. It has a weak front end, it has a weak rear end, it has a weak transmission, a weak transfer case, and at some point, LSs are definitely not weak, but head gaskets are an issue, intake gaskets are an issue. You may want to service those problems before you cause it extra issues by putting a cam in it and doing whatever. Reseal the engine while you're in it is what I'm getting at. You could easily solid axle swap one of these trucks. You could easily put a full floater in the rear, and you could have an amazing off-road wheeler, or a lot of people make these things into pre-runners. That is another awesome way to do the truck. Again, a lot of money to do that in a lot of time, and you're going to change its use if you just want to drive it to and from. Let's just say that was your hunting property. You could easily stick it right in one of these farm drives, park it, no problem, back it out again, do your hunt. You could probably drive into that deep snow even, you know, throw in four-wheel drive and bomb through the deep snow. You could probably do that too. They're pretty capable. They do a pretty good job. And this truck does have a G80 factory traction aid. I'm not going to call it a locker because it doesn't function like one. Be careful with G80s. They work well if you need them on wet grass. They are not designed to transfer a large amount of torque at all. They will unlock and you will have an open diff. They are made to get you unstuck on grass or soupy nonsense. They are not made for snow bogging, mud bogging, wheeling, deep snow. They will blow up and they will also just fail, and you'll be able to run it with it broken. You can blow it up and break the ring gear too. Just keep that in mind. But you can also just you can also just run it with it broken too, as long as you don't tear the ring gear up. You'll know it if you tear the ring gear up. What else can we say here? They have mediocre speakers at best, but they work. But what you really want out of this truck is it's affordable. It handles fairly well. It has good driving dynamics for the amount of money you're going to pay for one of these things. And they are really easy to fix. You can get all the parts you'd ever want to get for them. So they are a great farm, ranch, toy, cabin truck, or daily driver. You could easily fix one of these up. I just got done putting some time and effort into new brakes, water pump. I had the shifter cable replaced, and I had them do all three fuel lines at the same time because they were, I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty miserable job. I was more than happy to hire a hand on that. So we put a little bit of money into this truck to make it ready to go again. I'm just out on a test drive enjoying it. It is going to be back to work, hopefully, in all of its capacity. The ABS light is on. The fuse is actually not pulled. There's another problem with this, and I don't even know what it is. GMT800s can have some funky electrical problems. Watch my video on the TBC fuse, total body control fuse. It is a 10 amp fuse, and it has the power to totally screw up your truck. It potentially, I'm not saying every time it fails, it will, but it has the potential to cause the windows not to work, the door locks not to work, the truck not to start, the dash not to work, the headlights not to work, the brake lights not to work, the turn signals not to work, the interior lights not to work. It is amazing what can happen when you have a failed TBC fuse. Watch that video if you have any electrical problem. Watch the video, check it on your truck, and see if that problem applies to you. It is a huge problem. It is really annoying, and you can solve it by simply checking that 10 amp TBC fuse. And there are multiple TBC fuses on newer trucks, the 03 Pluses. They have a different arrangement. They have 3 of them, I think. They may even have 4. And they all do different things, and they will all cause different problems. So that's electrical is one thing to be very careful with on these trucks. I would not recommend, unless you are an electrical genius, buying one of these. And I'm not an electrical genius. I'm quite literally the opposite. It took me a month of searching on forums to find the TBC fuse solution for this truck. Someone shared it. It was a really obscure forum listing in an Escalade forum, if I remember right, that I found after digging, and it is the solution for the problems that I have had, and I've had it fail twice after that. I don't know what causes it to fail. Something to keep in mind. Applies to 2500 HT2s, HTs as well. When I say mild modification, I mean I definitely don't recommend leveling, because the front suspension geometry gets totally out of whack when you level. Don't recommend any of that. I also don't recommend lifts that don't drop your differential to correct your geometry. And when you do that, you're going to end up putting so much more load on the drive line that you're going to have to address your issues with the strength of the rear axle, the strength of the front end, the strength of the transmission, the cooling of the truck. By the time you put the bigger tires on that are going to match your lift, I highly recommend sticking with it mostly stock, unless you want to go wild. By go wild, I mean I wouldn't even recommend paying the money for a 406E build, but a 408E swap, potentially, as well as someone's getting a new tank. Jeez. Interesting. That I would recommend going wild and doing it all at the same time, instead of, because you're going to end up breaking things along the way, and you're going to need to address something to do with the 10 bolt in the back, because the 10 bolt is notoriously weak. and it will break at the worst possible time because it's not a super duper strong axle. Be very careful overloading them too in terms of hauling and towing. It's not only about tires and traction, it's also about weight bearing. They have troubles with that too, bending axle tubes, which cause bearing issues and whatever and what have you. So I think I've given you a pretty good overview of what it's like to own a GMT800. I've tried to tell you everything that I've learned about them. I guess we can talk really quickly about the strength of a 2500 HD or 3500 HD. 480E is a super duper strong trans. The best way to kill it is to pump all the guts out of it. They have a plastic connector for your transmission cooler lines. They fail, the transmission pumps all of its blood out and it dies. And once it gets that hot from pumping all its guts out, it's going to weld everything together and your tran's going to be junk. You're going to need a new trans. So check those lines. That's one of your biggest problems with 480E. They generally don't get too hot unless you have a cooling fan issue. Make sure your clutch is good for your cooling fan. Highly recommend not going to E fans because they don't move enough air for an HD truck. If you're towing heavy, or if you're not towing heavy, then HD fans will save you, 5-10 horsepower. So maybe even more, maybe 12. I don't know. A good bit of horsepower. So that's one thing I wouldn't recommend doing. The 14-bolt full float in the back of a 6.0 truck is a really good axle. The 10.5, there's lots of aftermarket for it, and it's an easy axle to deal with. The 11.5 full float rear end that's in the 8.1 and the Duramax isn't as much aftermarket, limited differential options, and very expensive, as we found out, pinion yoke for hooking to your drive shaft for your U-joint. We found out that is extremely expensive. It was like $300 for one of those. So keep that in mind as being very expensive. The 10.5 full float 14 is a great axle, easy to modify, commonly used in off-road applications. The 11.5 is stronger. It is also less parts available and more expensive. What else we got here? Front differentials rarely fail on 2500 HDs. I haven't really heard of them fail on half tons either. Honestly, your rear end and half tons more likely to go out than the front. Drive shafts are fairly good on both of them. The pump wear issue on the 261, 263 T-case on 2500 HD is an issue. I had to rebuild mine and replace or put the new back half on because mine wore out from the pump moving, rubbing, and chewing its way through the cover. And then you lose oil and eventually it blows up the T-case. I caught it before it did it by total happenstance. It was totally by accident. So 6.0s, fuel pumps on all of these are an issue. What they'll do over time is they'll lose volume, and at full throttle you run out of fuel, drain the rail, you get P300 misfire, and you'll lose power. The truck will feel like it is slower, and someone will say something to the effect of, well, my truck isn't as new as it was, I think the engine needs a refresh, it just feels slow. Well, actually what's going on is the engine is running extremely lean because you're draining the rails, and your injectors are dumb. They literally open up for a prescribed amount of time at a prescribed time. They do not deliver an exact volume. Whatever fuel rail pressure is there is what determines how much fuel you get. So if you have less fuel volume there, fuel pressure, and you open up the injector the same amount of time at the same time, you get less fuel. So these injectors are dumb. They're not like diesel injectors, which, well, even then they're fairly dumb, but they're even more dumb on this. And if you have low fuel pressure, you will have a lean engine. It's already a little bit lean. You're going to lose a lot of power, and eventually you're going to get to the point of misfire, surging, all kinds of good stuff. So fuel pumps are an issue. They're kind of annoying to change. Make sure you keep your fuel filter changed and try not to run yourself out of fuel. It's another good one. What else we got here? Anyway, if you guys like this video, I can make follow-up, and we should really get the 6.0 done so you can enjoy it. It's 2500 HD, and it's a wonderful truck, and the fact that I haven't finished it is really shame on me. I decided to pull the motor out because I was young, dumb, and stupid. In a few weeks, literally after I pulled the motor out, the heads were still off getting machined, and I found out I was going to be a father. Haven't put it back together yet. Still sitting at my dad's shop, apart. Everything T-case rebuilt, sitting next to the trans, ready to go in with the new motor sitting in front of it, and I haven't done it yet. So, something that I should really do, I need to do better on, is completing my projects when I start them. So if you'd like to learn more about GMT800s or you enjoyed the video, comment down below, like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. There's a huge merit in these trucks. I really enjoy driving it. Honestly, I could see going on a road trip in this truck. It's so comfy, so relaxing. The heat works extremely well. Seats are comfy. They're big and cushy. There's just really very few downsides, except for, like all old trucks, you need to service them. And sometimes service can accumulate over time and you end up with sizable issues. So once you cure all those issues, you have a pretty nice truck. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great day.